Last month, we launched a live webinar campaign for a client who runs a business coaching offer. And from that one webinar, we booked 64 calls and generated $144,000 in cash collected, only spending $3,500 on ads. So I'm going to break down exactly how we structured this, the 3 ways that we book calls from the webinar, and how to get this set up and working as a campaign that you can keep running on repeat. Before I get into the strategy, let me just say, webinars get a bad rep sometimes, and I get it. People say they're dead or they don't work anymore. And I think that comes from people who have probably ran one webinar, it didn't go well, and then they moved on. They probably had, expensive leads, low show rates, didn't book many calls, which, when you're putting in a lot of effort into kind of planning and presenting, is super demoralizing, and it just feels like a complete waste of time. But the reality is, if you're selling something for 5, 10, 20K plus, you need to have trust and education in place before people book a call. And you need people to understand what you do, how you do it, why you're different. And you need to activate the desire for them to move forward now and not later. Live webinars, when done right, are a great conversion mechanism to do that. And we have several clients in completely different industries to each other who are running these campaigns successfully each month. So let's jump into the strategy, and I'll show you exactly how we set this up and how this could work for your offer. So the first step to a high converting webinar is what we call ideation. You can have the best slide deck in the world, but if no one cares about the big idea that you're presenting on, no one's going to turn up. Then, if you have an idea that doesn't clearly bridge into your high ticket offer, you may get people showing up to the webinar, but then they don't book calls and actually convert. So we want to reverse engineer and zoom in on a core component of our high ticket offer. A big mistake I see a lot of people make is they try and cover way too much, and it just overwhelms people. So how we come up with the core messaging is by getting clear on top of mind problems that people are actively looking to solve. Asking somebody to, block out 60 minutes in their calendar and actually show up and pay attention means we need to be speaking to something that they care about and actively want help with. For this webinar, we focused on the problem of time and how brick and mortar businesses are spread thin. They're often working on parts of the business that don't actually grow it, meaning they're working harder, but they can't take time off and their business isn't actually growing. So it's a real relevant problem in the market. And next, we want to find a unique angle of how we solve that problem. So you may know this in internet marketing terminology as the new way of doing things. And what makes this effective is either having something that's curiosity-led, so a complete unknown, or a hot topic that people, hear about, but they don't fully understand or haven't fully adopted yet. And we chose this in the form of AI. It's a hot topic, but most business owners are either not using AI or they've just, started using it in a very basic way. The whole structure of this webinar is showing them what they're doing wrong, which connects to their problem, then showing them the new opportunity, which is, in this case, it's how they can get back their time with AI, right? So they can focus on revenue growth and also have time off. And lastly, we want to tie this into, our core offer. Within the webinar, the problem we're solving is time, and we're solving it with AI. But then we're opening up this bigger problem, which is that their business is a mess, right? They're overwhelmed and their revenue is stalled, so they don't know what to do next. That's when we can offer a bigger picture step. In this case, we positioned it as a business audit. Strategy sessions, game plans, audits, they've all worked well for our clients in the past when we've been doing this with webinars, but the key distinction is we're not trying to sell our offer yet, right? We're selling the next step, which is the call. Then once people are on the call, that's when we sell the offer. What's important though is that we're not just letting anyone book a call, right? They still need to fill out a short form where we use conditional logic to either qualify or disqualify people. So that way, we're only booking calls with people who are the right fit for the offer. We're not filling our sales teams, time up with a load of people that, aren't actually a good fit. Okay, so now we've covered ideation, how we come up with the core topic of the webinar. We now need to look at how we fill it. So this next stage is about promotion, right? There's no point putting all of this time and effort into planning and presenting if you only have 10 people turn up. So to fill this webinar, we focused on 3 channels of promotion, right? Cold ads on Meta, which brought in about 350 signups, warm ads on Meta, which brought in about 50 signups, and email marketing, which brought in another 200 signups. So in total, we had about 600 people sign up for the webinar, and we spent about $3,500 on the ads, which was about 80% to cold traffic, and about 20% of the budget went to warm retargeting. And that warm retargeting was made up of, Facebook and Instagram page engagement and the email list itself, because not everybody is actually going to open the emails where we're promoting. And they're all running to the same landing page. So even if people were already on the email list, we still want them to opt in. Now they're getting, all of the specific nurture content for the pre-webinar sequence. Sometimes I see people promote webinars to their email list and they just send them straight to a Zoom link. We want them to re-opt in. We don't just want to get anybody on the webinar. This is a webinar for a specific type of business owner. What we do is on the opt-in page, we use a form with conditional logic to get the right people signing up. Now, unlike our application to book a call, usually we just use one question for this. And this is just to find our ICP and to train Meta to find more of these people. If all you ask for is name and email, you might get slightly cheaper leads, but you're much more likely to fill the webinar with people who just aren't the right fit for your offer, making it, basically a waste of time and money. Meta's pixel conditioning can either work in your favor or against it, but you need to tell it what a good lead actually is, and it's going to be trained to find more of the right people. So on the form, when people say, in this case, they're not a business owner, we don't pixel them, and it means Meta only counts people who have come through and selected they're a business owner as a lead. That allows us to find more of those people. The qualification criteria might be different for your business, and this still works with B2C offers too, not just B2B. We run webinars in B2B and B2C, but there's always some sort of qualification in place. For the existing email list, we did a 7-day email sequence to promote the webinar, focusing on different teaching points that we're covering in the webinar, and then just using time scarcity as we got closer to the date itself. Obviously, that's it's genuine scarcity. The time's coming up to an end, so we want to get people over the line. And when people signed up for the webinar, we sent them warm-up content, right? So they went into a separate sequence outside of the main list. And what we did is, first of all, we sent them a blank worksheet that they could go through on the webinar. This is to build commitment and anticipation for the actual webinar itself. Then we sent them long-form content, so videos and podcasts, so they could get to really understand and know the business more and build trust before they show up. And then on top of this, we had SMS and email reminders with the links going out to registrants. And how we break this down is we do an instant send when they first opt in, then we do 48 hours out, 24 hours out, 1 hour out, and then we do a just-in-time reminder just as the webinar is going live. So we're maximizing show-up rates. And that's how we fill the webinar, right? In this case, we had around 600 signups and we had about 200 people show up live, right? 20 to 25% is industry standard for show up rate. And we were around the 33% mark. So we were well above average on that one. Now let's dive into the third key to a high-performing webinar, which is converting registrants into calls and, of course, sales. Now, most people just focus on the webinar itself and they pitch the call right at the end of the webinar. And this is how you lose 50 to 70% of your call volume. You end up putting all of this effort in just to promote, to get people on, and then you only get a handful of calls booked. If that happens, you may as well have just run a VSL campaign instead. So remember, the reason we do webinars is because we want high volume, right? We need to get the most amount out of this webinar. Otherwise, it's just not worth running. So there's 3 places we book calls in a webinar campaign. The first place is actually right after they opt in, and we book these registrants in using what we call a fast track VSL. And in this campaign, we had about 20 calls booked from this alone, right? 20 additional calls just from this one page. So this VSL is a 3 to 5 minute video talking to their immediate problems that you already highlighted in the ads. That's why they opted in for the webinar in the first place. And this allows you to find people who are basically wanting to take action much faster. They don't want to sit around. They don't want to wait for the webinar. They're like, I have this problem that I need fixing right now. It's a burning problem. And then that is why they're going to book the call quickly and jump on with your team. The second place we book calls is, of course, the webinar itself. And we don't just offer a call at the end of the webinar. We offer one at the beginning too. And the reason being is a few years ago, I actually helped a friend scale a new business from 0 to 70K a month. And we just did live webinars and email marketing. So every 2 weeks, we do a new webinar and focus on making improvements each time. We weren't changing the topic. We were just refining it and getting it better and better and better. And after a few iterations, a few months in, what we noticed was that by the time we were actually pitching the call at the end of the webinar, we'd already lost anywhere from sort of 30 to 50% of people who joined us at the start of the webinar. So what we did is we added in a simple and soft call to action about 5 minutes in, and we massively increased bookings during the live webinar. Again, as we spoke about earlier in the video, we position the call as valuable. So in this case, it was a business audit. We're not selling them on our program yet. We're not, really going hard on our core offer. We're just getting them to book a call. And what we're doing is we're getting them to fill out a form, right? So we're not sending them straight to book in. They still need to qualify. They still need to go through a form. So we're not just filling the sales team up with a load of time wasters. And we use conditional logic to do that, right? People fill out the form. If they don't qualify, they can't book in. And then the third place that we book calls is in the follow-up emails. So most people will send a follow-up the day after or the same day, just with the recording of the webinar. And yeah, we do that. I don't really see much uptake from that. I don't know how many people actually go through it, but we rarely get many calls booked from that. What we do is we send a very simple CTA email a few days later. So usually we run webinars on a Thursday and we'll send the email 4 days later on the Monday. And all we do here is we add a little FOMO and scarcity. So an example that we've used in the past, and we sort of modeled for this one as well, we had so many people book in for a business audit on the webinar last week, not everybody could get a space. So we've decided to open up 5 more spaces this week. It's first come, first serve, then the spaces will be full. And again, we send them to the form first, then if they qualify, they can book in. If they don't qualify, they don't book in. And between these 3 touch points, the fast track VSL, the webinar itself with the early pitch, and then the post webinar follow up, that's how you go from booking sort of 5 or 10 calls from a webinar to booking 40, 50, or in this case, 64 calls like we did with this client. Now, one thing I want to mention is for this particular client, the webinar wasn't the only thing running. They also had a VSL funnel running alongside it, where we had an opt-in page so the email list was consistently being built and people were booking calls separate to this. And this generated a further 40 calls in the month and around 96K in additional revenue to this webinar, right? If you have a webinar running, maybe you only run it once or twice a month, then it opens up space to book calls other ways, right? They also had a good content and email marketing system in place, and this is important to know. It's not just about having one ad campaign running. You need to have a way in which you can consistently bring in cold traffic, warm them up, and then convert them. But it's not always linear, right? Some people are going to come in fast and convert because, they're in the stage of wanting to take action, and some are going to take weeks or even months to convert, right? I've had people on my email list for 2 years before they convert. With the webinar, even if people don't book now, they're on the email list, right? And they can be retargeted to a VSL or to the DMs or to more content, right? They're not lost. They just need more nurture, and maybe the timing just isn't right for them. So we call this the conveyor belt marketing system, and it's how we're able to scale high ticket offers effectively. We fully build out the top of funnel cold traffic ad system, the middle of funnel nurture, and the conversion mechanisms and offer cycles to get people booking calls at different stages. Webinars are just one piece of the system, but when you have everything sort of working together, your marketing becomes incredibly profitable. And if you want to see how to apply this system to your business, then click the link below. And if you qualify, you can book an audit where we'll go through and review all of your current marketing, what's missing, and what to focus on to start scaling with cold traffic. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.